Great, thank you so much. And I have included slides as background information, but also wanted to deliver my written testimony. My name is Heather Reynolds, and I have the privilege of representing the Diocese of Fort Worth and serve as the CEO of Catholic Charities Diocese of Fort Worth. Our organization in Fort Worth is a $27 million enterprising nonprofit with diverse services, poverty solutions, and income-generating social enterprises that help tens of thousands of people in our 28-county diocese each year, most whom are working poor, some whom are even Catholic. We challenge the way poverty is addressed through research partnerships, exporting solutions, and serving as a resource for policymakers. We truly believe we can find a way to eradicate poverty. And that starts with the faces of the refugees we meet every day. Like Gabriel, one of the lost boys of Sudan, who fled his home as a 12-year-old, trekking throughout Africa and losing everything and every person he knew along the way, all on the account of freedom. He is now one of the hardest working team members I have on my staff. Or Samuel, a refugee I met serendipitously a few weeks ago in my cab when I was in Nevada. In near perfect English, he recounted to me how good this country has been to him after the horrors of war he experienced in Ethiopia. He was resettled in Atlanta, saved up for a year, and moved to Nevada to be with other Ethiopians. Now, every year at Christmas, he and others return to Atlanta, bringing all the money they have saved and give it to the nonprofit there that gave him this American chance. If you are unfamiliar with the term refugee or have never met one of these 780,000 resettled here in the U.S., I want to make clear these are folks who have fled their homeland and cannot return because of persecution for a multitude of discriminatory reasons. They are not seeking entry into the United States just for a better life or for work opportunities. They are victims, and literally, according to the federal government's definition, you are not a refugee unless you are going to be persecuted for the sake of your life. These folks are fleeing for their lives. As recent events have unfolded across Europe, many fear the possibility of terrorists posing as refugees entering the United States, and I get it completely. But refugees are the most scrutinized of any immigrant group entering the United States. Refugee status starts with the United Nations High Commission, who refers the refugee to the United States Department of State, who then contracts, in our case, with the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, one of the 9 voluntary organizations, who then contracts with our office to resettle the refugee. Before they're allowed to come to the United States, they must pass through 13 rigorous steps. On average, the refugee screening process takes between 18 to 24 months. But many of the clients we served have lived in camps anywhere between 17 to 22 years before coming to our country or another country across the world. If a terrorist wanted to enter the United States, posing as a refugee would promise a nearly impossible chance of success, not to mention, frankly, one of the most inefficient options, with less than 0.5% of all refugees worldwide ever crossing the U.S. soil. Funding for the majority of refugee resettlement programs stems from the federal budget. Every year, Congress allocates specific dollars designated to fund refugee programs. It reaches the state in one of 2 ways, through our National Resettlement Office or through the Department of Health and Human Services, which grants money to the Office of Immigration and Refugees Affairs. When we accept a refugee, we do so in collaboration. I'm so sad to hear about the city of Amarillo's and their experience, but I can tell you, in Fort Worth, Texas, collaboration includes quarterly meetings with all of our friends and folks in our city to talk about the issues we're experiencing, to collaborate, to trouble solve, to problem solve together, and more importantly, to make recommendations to us of how many refugees in Fort Worth that we have the capacity to handle that year. After that, we call the state of Texas and talk to our friends there and say, guys, this is what we think our community can handle. Is that all right with you? And after getting their blessing is when we finally commit to our national refugee office how many we feel Fort Worth, Texas can handle. So while it's sad to hear about Amarilla's experience and a very real experience for them, please note that is not the experience that we in Fort Worth, Texas are facing. Last year, Catholic Charities in Fort Worth resettled 609 refugees. Of the 12 other Catholic Charities agencies in our state, there are 7 currently serving refugees, all with varying capacities that are limited in part by a local community's capacity. We in Fort Worth are proud to say that 96% of our clients in our Refugee Match Grant program reached self-sufficiency in 6 months. That means free of social service, including state assistance, because we get them to a point where they don't qualify for Texas benefits anymore. I know refugees and former refugees in Fort Worth who operate and own small businesses, work in our hospitality industries, help others through social services agencies, serve as community interpreters, and hold public office. It means these individuals are learning a new language, assimilating into our communities, engaging in our workforce, all within 6 months. We have companies, when they start branches in our local community, who pick up the phone and call Catholic Charities Fort Worth and say, we'd love to take some of your refugees. They are the most dedicated and loyal employees. We place an extremely strong emphasis on employment for all adults who are not too ill or elderly to work. And boy, do they ever. We would be so lucky to have the same success rates with our domestic clients here. I understand that you have a job to do, to ensure the safety of Texans, and we all appreciate that. I also know we have a moral obligation to welcome the stranger as Christ calls us to do. I don't believe that maintaining the American and Christian values of hospitality and safety and prudence are mutually exclusive. They're not. My request of you today is to balance those responsibilities carefully and to not lead our state with fear. And if you do not know a refugee personally, I would suggest before you make any permanent decisions on refugee services in our state, that you take time out of your schedule to just sit down and have coffee with one. I am more than happy to make that happen for any one of you in this room. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity, and I would be more than honored to answer any questions that you have today.